Hello, I'm Alfred Enoch and I'm on FrConventions. I mean, it's a great question, but I'm afraid it's too long since I've read the books and seen the films to give you an appraisal of whether that is, you know, a good overarching, depiction of discrimination in reality. So it's a difficult one to answer, but you know, I suppose one of the things that does come through the books is that idea of, you know, there's that kind of like eugenicist strain in the kind of, you know, Voldemort and the Death Eaters thinking that people have to be pure-blooded and all the rest of it, and you know, miscegenation, if that's a word in English, I think it is. You know, diversity is always a good thing, right? That's what, you know, that's what renews cultures and provokes change and moves things forward. When there's encounter, that's why trade and different people from different tribes and parts of the world meeting creates great, you know, advances, as long as it doesn't then become one side trying to exploit the other, which obviously is also sadly one of the inevitable consequences, not the inevitable maybe, but one of the frequent consequences of trade, historically speaking. But, you know, basically I've sort of stumbled my way into a sort of bad history essay, but, you know, I think accepting difference and engaging with people who think differently, speak differently, live differently, whatever, is important, and staying in your own little camp is never really gonna work or help. Oh yeah, you know, I'd like to think that, because also, like, this is a question I have. I feel like, if I remember this rightly, but you'll both know better than me, there's no university, is there? People go to Hogwarts and that's it, and you leave at 17, so there's no like mention in the books of any like higher education. So, you know, I say that to say that that's a big phase in your life and an institution that is a big part of your life, and presumably, you know, if like Dean, you've come from a Muggle environment and then you get introduced to that world, like Harry, you don't just like go back and not, I mean, maybe you do go back, but you don't necessarily, you'd be unlikely not to have any engagement with the magical world. So I guess the combination of those things mean he's still going to be in this world that Seamus is in, and Seamus has occupied, you know, kind of always. So it makes sense that it would still be friends, like between that and being the kind of formative institution in your life that's also your like entryway into a whole new world and way of being. It would make sense that that friendship would last, because, you know, I suppose when friendships often don't last, when people are very close with people at school, often that's because people then go to university and make other friends and all the rest of it. I suppose there's no reason to assume that happens. So, yeah, mates with Seamus. Watching West Ham on the weekend, you know, probably happy about the Europa Conference League, which West Ham won last season. Good for them. Cheering them on in the Europa League, something like that. Yeah, that, you know, that's one of the really extraordinary things about Potter, is that not just the scale of it, but the longevity of it. You know, the fact that it's this kind of cultural phenomenon that is straddling generations. You know, there was a time that people, I think, would be like, oh, you know, that was the film when I was young, or that, and the next generation would be like, well, that was the film when I was young, or this was the music I listened to. And often, that, you know, there's these things kind of divide generations in a way that seems to that Harry Potter seems to have bucked that trend to a bit of a degree. So, you know, I have a lot of friends who, my age, who grew up with the books and reading the books and then are reading it to their kids, do you know what I mean? So people, there feels like there's a kind of continuity. Partly I think that's because, you know, there's still material being made around the world, which, you know, new content is always good, I suppose. In terms of the play, you know, in terms of the books, you know, the textbook, the Fantastic Beasts and the films and all the rest of it. So it gives I suppose it keeps it in the limelight, but I think it's not just that. There is a kind of it's something about the strength of feeling around the stories, around the world of Potter, that I think is probably mostly responsible. That and the time, maybe there's something about that time in the kind of early 2000s, and as the internet was growing into what it is today, where people could meet and share their passions for things, and it became a more mainstream thing. You know, I'm sure there are lots of like sociological reasons, but probably underpinning that is the fact that people really love this story and care about it and want to share it. And it's a testament to it that it seems to stand the test of time in that way. Yeah, it was great. I mean, I didn't, you know, when I went on to How to Get Away with Murder, I didn't really know anything about what I was getting into, because I'd never worked in the States before, you know, I hadn't really done very much telly. And so it sort of came out of the blue, and it just sort of became this massive thing. And sometimes people ask me about Potter, they're like, did you know it was going to be so huge? And I sort of say, yeah, not because I actually had a sense of how it would genuinely impact the world, but because I had read the first 2 books which had come out by that point, and I loved them, and my friends loved them. So in my small sample size, you know, it's that thing, you know, I suppose when you're younger, or when you know, before you have more experience, you think your little perspective of the world is the world. And so I was like, it's massive, it's massive. Everyone in my class has read it, like, therefore it's big. But, so, you know, that came from a kind of naivety. But I did have, you know, it was subjective and it was flawed, but I did have the sense that it was a massive thing. With How to Get Away with Murder, I didn't know, because, you know, we shot it as a pilot first, so I was like, it might not get picked up, no one might see it. So for it to kind of snowball into this kind of massive thing that it became, you know, sometimes I'm like, who hasn't watched that show is mad. Like, I go anywhere and people are like, oh, How to Get Away with Murder, I love that, I can't believe they did this, I can't believe they did that. And I'm like, I go to some countries and I was like, surely no one's seen it here. And then I'm like, okay, no, they have. Like, I mean, great. That's why we tell stories, do you know what I mean? To reach people. So, you know, massively gratifying. Yeah, spoiler alert. I had that today. Someone was asking me, lots of people were asking me questions about How to Get Away with Murder. And someone was like, I haven't seen it. And I was like, well, there's the spoiler. Yeah, it was, I was out in LA on that job for 3 years, you know, 7 months a year for 3 years. And so you get very close with the people you're working with, and especially doing network television, you know, it's intense and there are long hours, and we shot 7 months of the year, and, you know, and so it's really bonding. And there's that mad thing that things going to air as you're still shooting episodes, and, you know, so there's a whole business around it, and you know, that was the thing for me. I became very close to the people that I was working with, and still have a lot of love for them, and you know, we talk, catch up, and all the rest of it. And it's like, that was kind of the first thing that hit me. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go back home. You know, I was like, I live in London. I wasn't planning to change that. So, and even while I was shooting, I would be there, shoot, and go home. So I was like, oh, I'm not gonna just be around with everyone all the time, you know. So that was kind of the main impact for me. It's often the process is your experience through it has so much to do with the people that you're working with, and you know, the affection that grows between you, and the love that grows between you, and, you know, that kind of feeling of family. So that, you know, that was really the kind of loss, because Wes got a lot of story. I was like, it's cool. I think it was a good story. I think it was a good end. I'm like, I was, you know, from a kind of story point of view, I was like, I think it's a good choice. It opens up space also in the story for other characters. I was like, I'm down with it, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna miss it.